Super exciting day today at the Pariah office. We have Lawra Suits Clark. Welcome, Lawra.
Hey, thanks.
Laura's a independent game developer who's been a part of the indie scene in New York for a long, long time. They co-founded Baby Castles Gallery and currently teach at NYU
Mm-hmm.
and are also working on a bunch of new stuff that we're going to see
All
today.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Laura, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe for the people who don't know, and then we can dive right into this exclusive game that no one's ever seen.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. Let's see. I think I probably started making games like 10 years ago. I started grad school almost exactly 10 years ago, and that's kind of where I began. I did not make games prior to that. And still at NYU this whole time, more or less. Let's see. The first thing that I made in grad school was a collection of like small games, and I find myself kind of drawn back to this format repeatedly, even though I've tried other things. That was called Rooftop Cop. I did like a 5-year postmortem for it in 2020.
Yeah, that won some awards.
Yeah, it did. Well, no, it got nominated. Did it win anything? I think it got nominated for some stuff, and that's why I went to San Francisco for GDC and things like that. I used nominations as an excuse to travel.
Yeah.
Witchball did win something though in Switzerland.
Nice.
The weird thing about this makes no sense. But the weird thing about winning awards with games is that oftentimes the festivals don't exist for very long. So it's really funny to be like, oh, I got this award, and it's like, well, the award doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, you're one of 3 people who's ever won this award and never again. You know? But I do have a physical trophy, which is nice, I suppose. Trophies are cool.
Yeah.
So the Switzerland festival or award doesn't exist anymore?
No, I don't think so. It was supported by the Zurich local government, I believe. The mayor of Zurich was there.
Wow.
Yeah, she seemed nice.
Big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, this particular game collection thing, I think I finally gotten it to the point where it's like I can see the edges now. Like it's 19 games, and I use games loosely. Some of them are more mechanically involved than others, but it's kind of a lot of things. I try to describe it as like maybe being closer to like allegorical fantasy or something, where all the characters are like very sort of archetypal, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on.
Allegorical fantasy, like, does it draw from some specific kind of mythology or?
No, well,
folklore?
more like something like the Wizard of Oz or something, right? Where all the characters are just sort of like they're just like archetypes. They are representative of different things.
Like
it's
you
not
know
like
them from before, but you don't know necessarily where. But you know these characters,
right? Where it's not like you're not going to be concerned about the character development of the Tin Man because the Tin Man represents a thing. Right. It's like they don't need like a backstory and they don't need like even like a future. It's just like they exist for this particular like story purpose.
Cool. And you were saying you see the edges of the game. Can you talk about how you see a game when you develop it, like seeing the edges versus seeing what like the meat or the center of the edges?
Yeah, so it's like kind of like a fog, or it's like emerging from a fog or something, where it's like, well, you don't really know how big it is, so you don't really know like it's hard to plan for like, okay, I need to do this and this and this. It depends on the kind of game, right? Like sometimes if you're making like sort of a more I don't know, traditional, or like let's say, okay, you're making a Metroidvania, it's like, okay, you know, like we need these things, we need X amount of like levels, and we can kind of scope it properly or whatever. But with other stuff, with this in particular, it was like every single one of these is kind of a smaller thing anyway. And so it's like, how many are there? Like, how many do you need? Like, how do they tie to each other? And so it's harder to get a sense of like, what is the total?
Right.
What is the complete form? I think it's like finally at the point where I'm like, okay, I see all the parts now. And I've been moving them around and like, is there an order to them? Does the order matter? How should I clump things? But like on the whole, like it's all kind of there. And so now I'm just like color coding things for myself on here.
Do we want to mention the game's name and just the general premise of what it is?
Oh, yeah, sure. Right. I mean, I've been calling it Faith Companion for a long time. It started as like a series of Google Doc notes in 2015 and on an airplane back from San Francisco while I was taking care of my dad, who had ALS at the time. And I made a bunch of little tiny games in Game Maker there that were vaguely related to this idea. And then I went on to do I did like Witch Ball and some other games and stuff. But I also had this kind of in the background as just like a bunch of notes. And then a couple of years ago, I just had a ton of I had some of these I don't even know where they are now. Well, the 3 or 4 of these were just like things that I had like half started. And I was like, well, actually all of these are like one game. I had like a bunch of notes in Google Docs and then all these little other projects that I had started. And I was like, all these are just kind of one thing actually. And so the past couple of years has just been like trying to figure out what that one thing is. And so now it's sort of a larger narrative game about a person who is terminally ill and they are ending their own life, and this is kind of their last day. So a lot of these things take place in different time periods in the same place. Okay. Because there's a lot of like some sort of serious like political things going on and some personal things going on, but like your primary window into the world is as dogs. So you play as these little dogs that are just kind of around. And the way that I explain it is that I feel like people's relationship to games is very similar to like a dog's relationship to the world, where you're just kind of like there. You don't have any specific morality or like ties to anything really. You're just kind of around and you're like playing.
Like when you embody your avatar in the game, you are kind of like a dog in the world.
You're literally a dog. Yeah, and just kind of walking around. And like people are saying stuff around you and you can just pay attention or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because dogs are trained or programmed. I mean, we kind of, as a game developer, you have to kind of program the player to like do specific things. Like, you feel like you have free choice in the game, but there's specific things you can do, right?
Yeah, you're living in an architected world, but also like dogs don't have any particular they're not trying to make the world into something, right? They're just there, which is basically how you experience video games. Like you can't really change anything about it, and nor do people really want to. You're just sort of like goofing off, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's kind of the angle for that. And so I've also like split it up control wise, which is always fun for me. So like anything you do as a person, you do with the mouse, and anything you do as a dog, you do with the keyboard. I've tried to keep it. I don't know. I try to organize things in my head that way. Like time segments are like different color palettes and stuff like that. And it's not like explicit, but I try to do those sorts of things. I don't know, just to keep things sort of organized. Yeah. So anyway, the sort of the structure that I've come up with now, this could change because it changes like every week. Is that there's this kind of primary hub. I can just go to it. Oh, can I click on this?
Oh, you know what? We might have to put the other screen up.
Yeah, because I noticed.
Oh yeah.
That makes sense. Screen.
We should put the other one on the other window and then click into it.
Put the other one on the other window?
Like the game into that monitor and then click on it and then we can still see it. Here.
But then Laura would have to look at this monitor while playing.
But this monitor, it would still be hooked up to that, right? Like put the game in that window, click into it, and leave that full screen and Laura can still control the game from here, no?
Because the mouse is going to be on either side, right? Does that make sense? Because the mouse is here right now, and then if I move the game here, then the mouse is there.
Yeah, but you should be able to... Oh, you can't see the mouse on there. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So maybe, since we've locked ourselves out, maybe we just...
Okay.
Yeah, we'll cut there, and then we cut over game. Alright. Gosh. F11. I'm still recording. Okay, nice.
Cool. I guess you can move the book.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, good idea.
Whoa. Whoa.
Whee.
We.
Yeah. Okay. So about the organization, I guess pretty early on, I made this like the FPS is probably gonna tank. Sorry for all this insane like placeholder art. Anyway, here's the dog.
This.
So there, I have this sort of like church hub thing, and I have kind of made 4 major branches of the whole thing. I'm kind of like labeling them. But
Cool.
the way that it works is like all the story sort of takes place in these 4 different branches, and every sort of like act or whatever, there's one less branch. So there's 4 options that can be done in any order. In the first act, and then the second there's 3, and then 2, and then 1, and that's the ending.
I love this like silhouette that's happening on the screen.
Yeah, so that's like a really a fun sort of technical this cutout thing that I've started using for all the segments. Yeah, so I'll just like go to one. So essentially, this is how you choose a branch: is you just kind of like go down, and
Cool.
it goes into the next one. So this is kind of the town segment where you know just mostly just walking around. Here's some cornfields and cars, lots of traffic, and some trees, millions of trees. Some people who are upset. Yeah, here's an auto shop.
I really love how the world kind of moves as you move. Like every object seems alive, you know, based on your input, which is really cool.
Yeah, you'll also notice there's a lot of just like all the art, all the character art is completely different from each other. It's just like a bunch of different random like, you know, they're Blake sprites, like my sprites, just like throwing random things in here to see what works. The buildings are mostly like, I feel like okay about the buildings. I just got really frustrated one day and I drew these buildings really fast because I was trying a bunch of other stuff that was complicated, and then these actually like don't look that bad.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my god, I love how the world just unfurls like this. You can go up and then the buildings kind of feel less dense and feel a little more explorable as you get close to them.
Yeah. So the primary inspiration for the visual layout was like those like medieval tapestries where everything's kind of evenly spaced. So like if I go down to the trees, well, I'll come back around. Yeah, I liked how everything was kind of spaced evenly on those like tapestries and stuff like that. And so if you think of them like rolling up at the top, so like when we see them on the horizon, they have this like sort of like normal parallax effect. But then when you actually are like amongst them, yeah, they're kind of a bit more like, you know.
That is really cool.
Even. And there's the cars, and like, the trees are all like a bunched up on the top.
And now we're cycled back to the.
Yeah.
Oh
So-
wow, it's never ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just the whole thing loops back around, and there's different like sort of, it's basically like almost like geologic layers sort of thing where there's the traffic layer, and then there's like cornfield layer, tree layer, and then like, you know, different kinds of city, and also it's maybe not super obvious as you're walking, but let's see. Yeah, so your scale changes. So right now I'm like, see how the dog's real tiny, and then like the sort of middle city is like a little bit closer in.
The cop.
What does the cop say?
Oh yeah, the police are all just like, they're waiting for something. They're waiting for
What should I do?
Yeah, I don't know. So the text is kind of all over the place. Somebody's trying to borrow money, I think.
But it's a fun text system where you can kind of have pauses and like, you know, you can have a punchline afterwards. You know, like
yeah, well, so a lot of this sort of like this like flat game movement style I really like a lot of games that have that, and this particular it's kind of a mashup of like what I remember MMOs being like, and then also 10 Beautiful Postcards, right? Where you're just sort of like wandering around and the camera's sort of following you, and there are chat bubbles everywhere that little characters are saying.
No collisions.
Yeah, right. And I really like in Catamites games the way that all the dialogue is very clipped. It has this very video gamey cadence to it. And so I've tried to keep all like the stuff that, you know, I don't really, the act of writing is like not enjoyable for me. So I don't have a problem writing small, short amounts of things. Yeah, so a lot of these is just like people saying like very short. Yeah, anyway. What do they say? I can't even remember.
So what if someone approaches like the academic first? Would the academic say, so did I?
No. So
Are they
all the
grouped together
conversations
kind of
are, yeah, they're clumped.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I have a little system where like there's an invisible trigger here, and when I get near it, it just launches the conversation or however many ways. So sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's, you know, 3 or 5 or whatever.
Nice.
But I don't want them to be too long. Like that one's I'm not even gonna go to it. It's too long. I try to keep them short.
Right, so you can walk through it and just experience it as you go, right?
Yeah, and there's the sound is turned off currently, but there's little like vocal sounds and stuff.
Fun. So Lillian, I feel like I've seen this icon on your desktop. Did you have a hand in this game at all, secretly?
A little bit. I did some of the I don't know. I feel like earlier on we had a lot of game design discussions. It was like me, Laura, and Laura's friend Zeke for a while, just talking about different sorts of things. We were sussing out, or just like came. I feel like Laura came with this Word document that just vomited up a million different stories that were just like, this is a funny idea. This is an image I want to portray. This is a vignette I want to actualize. And so we kind of just talked through a bunch of those things. I guess the handle would be like sort of some narrative structure, some game design, some choreography of later scenes, and just I had at the same time, I don't know what came first necessarily, but I had myself just been drawing these like pixel tapestries. I've never thought of myself as good at pixel art, but then when I started drawing these tapestries, they just like kind of came naturally. And then I was like, oh, like this is a moving tapestry. You do tapestry pixel art. Why not put some assets together? So, and I know Blake had a handle in doing character sprites.
Yeah, Blake drew this dog.
Yeah.
Oh.
And like you can, if you move the dog back and forth, like left and right.
Yeah,
I
it's just
love
sort of
that. I was gonna
miniature.
say I just love that. Yeah. So
Yeah, I broke the sprite into 3 parts, and it just like lerps its position, so it kind of has this weird flipping thing.
Yeah.
so fun. Is that character also drawn by Blake?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the ones that are like usually 3 colors with like two shades.
the kind of
Yeah.
blobby
They're
ones.
very blocky in primary color.
You can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's
Um,
also
yeah.
there's also like a character concept artist who's been doing really cool sketches too, sort of, very like elaborate drawings that to center around each character.
Yeah, it was like one of those things where I was like, I don't know how seriously to involve like other people like that, because most of our sort of collaboration was very sort of informal. It's just like talking about things and occasionally like drawing things or whatever. And so when it came down to like, oh, do I like ask someone to do like a thing like concept art or like a soundtrack or whatever, it's just like it felt almost like it was making it too seriously, because this is just like this is like the first time I've like shown this, right? And it feels very personal, like a little thing that I just do on my own time. But where's another? Even
the layout of this is very personal. Like it just evokes a desktop, right? Which is very personal to every person.
Yeah. It's I'm trying to arrange them into branches. So this will be like
Yeah,
There's town, and then the reliquary.
Reliquary? So I don't know what that means.
It's like a place where you keep relics.
Okay.
It's like part of it. So this is like, it's a bunch of just like stuff. So you can like go in. There's nothing in the rooms right now, but you can go in there. And the rooms are described on the bottom in some box.
Cool.
And then people just say stuff about it as you go.
I have to ask about this typeface. Have I seen this before in one of your games?
Probably not. The typeface on the bottom and the one that's used for all the chat is from Ultima Online.
Okay, rad.
That's just a personal memory of mine. Here are the advice columns. So you can sort of see some columns.
The columns, I love that.
Muriel's not a fan. Thinks they're dumb.
Should we talk about how we tried to source information for the advice?
Oh my god, I don't know. Is that? Yeah, I guess so.
We can. We don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, here's the thing. So the advice columns is a good joke to me about. Okay, so they just destroyed the Georgia Guidestones like a month ago. But anyway, the Georgia Guidestones was a large stone column full of like advice or like tips on how to structure society. And it had been there since the 80s, and no one really knows who put it there.
This is in Georgia, U.S., not in the country.
Yeah, in the U.S. And there's been a couple other attempts that I tried to look this up, but I'm pretty sure I remember hearing about a couple other like attempts to like do that sort of stuff where it's like people, putting like how a zipper works on like a plaque in the desert. You know what I mean? They're just trying to save information for the future, like just in case a disaster hits.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to save all this information on like things that will, weather the coming storm or whatever. And so I just thought that there would be a really funny trend if everybody just got into that, just like making these big stone monuments of like advice. And then, so this is a collection of those, like assuming that had happened. Then these people who like operate this museum have just like collected all these little, advice columns. Well, that's freaking out.
The curtains?
Yeah. Anyway. So I was thinking like maybe these should be readable, or at least like you should be able to read some of them. Mm-hmm. And so we tried to solicit some advice from like anonymous people on Amazon Mechanical Turk.
Okay.
Because a major theme of this game is that all the people that live in this town, their job is to remotely operate AI appliances.
So like in this world, a lot of the people's jobs is to be the AI that is being commanded. So let's say like someone is like, oh, like coffee machine, make me a coffee or whatever. So, that person sees the coffee get made. But what's really happening is that there's like a person all the way on the other side of the world that hears that and then presses a button to make the coffee and the coffee gets made. Yeah. So there's that like theme of like, oh, AI is just really just humans doing small petty tasks. Yeah. And we're like, well, that's actually also real. What if we go onto like Amazon Mechanical Turk and pay people a certain amount of money to give us advice about life or something? And we kind of did it in this like really big batch at first without testing it. I feel like it's like not very clear how to like ask for the information necessarily. And so yeah, we sort of just like we just typed up these instructions, pressed enter, and then like thought that we were getting a lot of information, but it seemed like they were just all overwriting the same string over and over again, and I didn't know you had to like break out the code, and then I went back and broke out the code, and anyway, so a lot of it was just I think I phrased it not the best way. I think I said something like, there's a stone in the middle of the desert containing life advice that is supposed to last centuries and centuries and centuries. What is the advice that goes on the stone? And a lot of people were like, make sure you're hydrated, like this and that. And then some people would just like didn't understand it at all, and there's just like copy pasted text from Wikipedia articles about like animals and things like that. So then we were just like, oh, we should have like tested this in smaller batches first, but it was fun to see the errors, I guess.
Yeah.
And just actually do something in the real life that corresponded with what was going on in this other world. I think I wrote a huge spreadsheet myself of just advice in general. which other people can contribute to. But
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really weird. Yeah, because they were giving advice about being in a desert.
yes,
Mostly.
a lot of it was desert advice.
Or they were just trying to complete it really quickly because they only were being paid like $2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it was like, well,
It was just like
we budgeted $100 for this, and so it's like we can't really pay more than that. Like I don't know. It's like
That's fair.
so whatever. A fun experiment, I suppose.
Are any of those advice statements in the advice column?
No,
Okay.
it's one of those things where it's like at some point maybe I'll put them in here. Everything is such like such a skeletal form at the moment.
Mhm.
Like this, you can get from beginning to end. It's like you walk through the reliquary and there's some stuff to like see or whatever. The oracle is here in the garage.
It's
so
like the edges.
yeah, like
filled in.
there's a game where this is where you play in traffic. Like they're all like self-driving cars.
I don't think I've seen this one.
And so you try to get the cars to exit on your side of the tunnel. So imagine this is a tunnel, and I'm the blue one, and I'm trying to get the cars to exit off the left side of the tunnel, and the pink character is trying to get them to exit off the right side of the tunnel. And so if I want to check the score, I have to yell to my friends who are like up on the sides here and be like, "What's the score?" And it's 5-6. Okay.
So you're hurting the.
So I'm just sort of herding the cars by standing in front of them, and their little self-driving algorithms are like, swerve, there's a human in front or whatever, And so it's just sort of like playing
Can
in
we
the
check the score again?
traffic in the tunnel.
Okay,
I'm losing. Yeah. So I don't know. This is going to go on for at some point. I'll decide on a number, first to 30, first to 50. I don't know, but it's kind of like a lot of what this game is in total is just like little game design experiments that are just like as soon as they get to the point where I'm just like I don't want to do this anymore, then they're done.
They just die. Yeah. They
So-
kind of have like this air of like the impulsivity you have as like a kid to be like, and then there's gonna be this, and there's gonna be that, and then I'm gonna do this and that, and then just like immediately ditching it when you're over it.
Yeah.
But like seeing that materialize in these like small.
Yeah,
pieces
I've always
of
kind of
it.
liked stories that were like that. This is why I defend like films like Valerian or whatever that are like super, like they're really dumb, but I love the just sort of like breathless 8-year-old vibe of like something like that movie where it's like and then this and then this and then this. Anyway, so okay,
Yeah.
Can you
I guess
ask on the
I'll-
other side too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
That's
that
such a cool.
person
That's such
asks.
a. I love that dialogue.
Yeah. So the idea here, I mean, you can see the framing or whatever, but like the idea here is that your friends are like sitting on the sides of the tunnel. So imagine, like a regular like car tunnel. Or whatever. And then these frames will be like it's like a different view of like the side.
Yes.
You can see them all sort of zoomed in, sitting there.
I
And they'll
see.
tell you the score. You notice that was controlled with the mouse because it's people.
Oh, true.
Right, dogs are keyboard and people are mouse.
Yeah, so like this one, there's nothing going on here, but this one you're driving a car around like a map, but it's with the keyboard because the dog is driving, which is why it's crazy.
The dog's name is Kelly.
Yeah, in this particular case. Wham! Okay. It's like a JRPG map where you're just like driving around, just crashing into
Oh,
shit.
that looks so fun.
Yeah, anyway. And really early on, this is sort of the order that I'm thinking. I was like these 4 first, and then these ones, and then these ones. But really early on, you participate in this like sort of debt relief ceremony,
Wow.
where you just sort of like are walking through like the cemetery, and that's the debt counter up there, and it goes down as you go. And I do this like really quick. Like I don't know, an angel or something up there. I was just trying to fill like the sky with like stuff. So I got clouds and I got this rotating thing and whatever. So it's mostly just sort of about wandering back and forth and watching this number go down. Some other things will maybe make the number go down. I don't know. This one is mostly just like started from the visuals and I just made it. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. Oh, these are all your headstones.
I know. Yeah. I did the gravestones too.
So how long does it take to make one of these like small game vignettes?
I think that like this particular one I made in a couple days.
Okay.
Just because like, I mean, I knew what I'd drawn pictures of it before. I was just like, usually I just do like a visual layout first, and then I'm like, okay, I think I know how to do it. Like the reason that like the graves and stuff work on the edges like this are just because I developed this like cutout style. I can't go to like the actual game maker right now because this is just a build, but everything kind of, think of it like a cookie cutter, where I'm drawing everything to like a sheet, and then I have cutters that like cut out that, and then that cuts out another whatever. Anyway,
I see.
it's like hard to explain, but yeah. Anyway, so in all the other ones, it's kind of done as like a framing. But this one, I'm using it on the actual objects themselves, and it looks kind of nice. So this is kind of the newest one where I'm trying different visual stuff out.
Cool.
And then this one's probably the other,
Yeah,
the one that's like furthest along.
This is a good demonstration of what we mean by time traveling for the.
Oh right, yeah.
For
So
the
the dogs don't exist in any particular time. They're kind of free to just wander around.
Oh, did you? I sent you this picture from this museum. Yeah, yeah, and that's what. Okay,
Wait, can you elaborate on that?
sorry.
So there's this painting with like all these. It's just like little people in boxes on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I saw this painting in a museum. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, there's other people in the boxes, and they're all like clothed, and they're just kind of like down there.
In squares.
And so I just really quickly like added that to this.
Yeah.
So if you like see that this like headstone here, like,
Yeah.
when it like passes.
Oh, so they line up vertically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And then the
really
trees
cool.
are the empty ones.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So anyway, for right now, this sort of like pink and blue color scheme. I'll probably change all these color palettes eventually, but this pink and blue color scheme is like sort of near past.
Okay. So
And
there's
then-
different color schemes for past, present, futures.
Yeah, and then the sort of like peach and greenish one from the town is like present, quote unquote. And oh yeah, there's no
that's
animation,
nice.
so
The vanishing dialogue.
yeah, I worked really hard on
It's so beautiful.
the text.
Well done.
I'm glad that it works.
Ooh, what's that red?
It's a stick, so it's this color so I can find it easy. So anyway, that the giant throws a stick for you and you pick it up, and then you pick it up, you're in a different time.
Wow.
And you can sort of tell the passage of time by the size of the trees and the size of the giant.
Yeah, that's like the major markers.
And how does the fog? How did you do the fog here? Because fog is like such a thing in games, you know.
Yeah, this is
It looks so good.
it's just math. So this is like it's a 2D engine, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it's distance from you is determining the percentage of what color to draw. So it's either it's sort of like fading from this green in the background to like whatever colors I'm telling it to, which is this gradient yellow and green, I guess. And that's just a percentage based on its distance from the horizon line. And then the fog, the sort of foggy effect on these trees is the fact that they're actually like if you look at them, they're in two parts. The bottom is just like a solid color, and the top is this texture. And there's a gradient from solid to texture that goes from bottom to top. And so when the texture blends with that color, you can still see some of the tree. But when the solid part blends with that color, you can't see it at all. So you get like a fog in the lower portions, kind of vibe. If I were to go up and down in the scene, like I can't. It's locked.
Okay.
But if I were to go up and down, it would really screw up the visuals.
I was gonna say.
yeah,
What happens
so-
when you get close?
Yeah. So this is, and then this little, I just drew this mushroom for no reason. It's just like a transition element here, where they say some stuff. Then the mushroom just blows up because something else is going to go here. I'll reveal that later when I add it. But then you're in a different time. And, yeah, so the necromancers in this game are they're like the Peter Thiel, Elon Musk characters. There's an entire game about there's like a worker placement economics game that I'm designing with Alexander King, and that's like the most crunchy game out of all of these. Where it's Alexander and I co-designed it, and Alexander prototyped it in Unity, and then now that part is done, and I am going to remake it in GameMaker based on the notes that we made about it. So it's one of those things where it was big enough of an idea that it needed to be prototyped before I started adding it to this, because this project is already really big, and I didn't want more like nonsense.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's like a necromancer character, and that's his mother. He's also just like, it's just like generational wealth kind of thing.
Right.
Is it the giant?
It is. So this is the giant as a child, who's still very tall. She grows like a foot every year, I think was what I was thinking. So there's no animations in this game. It's just the disappearing stick.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then there's a stick, and then you pick it up, and you go back to here.
Oh wow.
See, then your time travel.
Yeah.
This is something that we like workshopped in a meeting.
Yeah.
That was a good meeting.
It was a good meeting. I was just like, oh yeah, we can just like
and
have you kind of clipping through different time periods.
And it works such that if you think about the dog's perspective or the people's perspectives in each of the times, it's like seamless. Like it.
You don't see the dog go away.
Yeah.
It's experiencing time in sort of a different way. So it's appearing in different moments throughout history.
Yeah.
And for the dog, this is a linear lifetime. But for anyone else, the dog just like suddenly kind of is acting older or weirder or something,
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, it's sitting down back here.
So when you come back here, you never actually moved from the stick anywhere.
Yeah, the stick is just
The
in
stick
one
is still in the
spot.
same
So I
location
can
the
just
entire
keep picking it up, and I can't pick it up anymore. I think I turned it off. Anyway. Yeah.
So in this scene, you never actually bring the stick to the giant, and that's why the giant's always like, "Why don't you ever pick the stick from me?"
It's like the last
But in
thing
the
it says.
future,
It's
when
like
the giant's
dog,
really large and on the ground,
You never brought that stick back to me.
Yeah. I think this might end up being like the end. This is like the end of the game. Yeah, I put it up at the top.
Oh, really?
Because I think I might save it for the end.
It's good.
Because like there's all this other stuff
Yeah.
happening.
Is there
So, what's the final form of this going to look like? Is it going to be arranged in kind of a way that you want people to experience it, like almost like an overworld map or something?
No, so this is
This
for
won't be
me.
showing.
Okay.
I'm going to use this. So you see how there were 4 different
Oh, right.
things.
Yes.
So it's these 4 rooms
Mm-hmm.
of the church.
Each room is a narrative branch,
Yes.
and depending on like which stage or which chapter you are and which branch you pick, you encounter one of those mini games. So that desktop thing is more for Lawra to just quickly debug and go to the levels.
Yeah.
I see.
But and the idea is here that like different like pieces of assets will be showing up in each room depending on the theming of whatever game you're about to encounter.
Yeah, so this is all extremely like bare here because it's like probably the last thing that'll be done because I think all the other stuff needs to be kind of in order before it's clear what even needs to be shown in these things.
That's true.
But like the idea is that you would complete, however many 3 or 4 whatever branches of these rooms, but you go down and then you get to them or whatever. And then once you're done with all those, you just go this way.
Yeah, you can walk away from the church hub.
You just walk to the right. Oh, there's another game out here, but I'll show that later. Then it's there again, and you're in like Act 2.
Oh, nice.
I know we've been thinking about how worlds last, so here's one demonstration.
So this is a different game where you shoot an arrow into the sky. Sorry, it's half. Okay. And then you go and get it.
Oh, I love that animation.
Here we go.
So you're not the dog here.
But yet you're moving with the keyboard.
Correct. Yeah, this is a long time ago. I know. Well, I can change this to make it the arrow keys, or I could just make it be a dog. Easy.
Yeah.
I thought it was a game of fetch. The dog was supposed
The fetch, I think
Is that a different game?
I'm gonna incorporate that into some of the other sections. There's a part where you sit on the river, and then there's the mecha part.
Ooh.
Yeah, so there's like way too much. That's what I'm saying. There's like too much going on because there's like dragons and shit, but then also like the primary character is like a mech pilot who like runs a church.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's the person whose end of life it is.
Yeah. So they're dying, and they're gonna do it by.
This is such a rooftop cop game.
It is.
This
yeah,
one.
It is.
I think. It reminds me of the one where you're dragging the stick around the.
Just like extremely slow, like doing nothing kind of stuff.
Check out Rooftop Cop.
Yeah, or don't.
Or don't.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically like a more realized version of Rooftop Cop, where I'm thinking more about it. And that was just Rooftop Cop. The whole thing was made in like less than a year, really, for the game to end. So a lot of the things that it's about kind of work afterwards. You know what I mean? Where it's just like I made them because I felt compelled to, and then it wasn't until after that. They started to actually make sense. So this is a character. This is one of Blake's drawings that I just colored blue just to differentiate it from. Anyway. Yeah, so this character experiences time backwards. It's the Oracle character who can remember the future but not the past. So they're extremely confusing to talk to, but people like having them around. Yeah, they're part of they're in the reliquary. You can go talk to them.
Is the dog walking? Was there a walking animation? Was that always there? Was that new?
Yeah, I added that at some point. It's like not even really. No, it's like not even really walking. It's like, I mean, it is, but it isn't. Well, you can't really see it, but
maybe
it's just like I inverted the colors of the legs.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah.
Oh my god!
It's like barely looks like it's walking. It's
works.
It's like
I think it works.
fine. Like the legs move a little bit. It's because it's one of Blake's drawings, so I just sort of like wobbled them a little bit, and then I inverted the colors.
It's really
and it
good.
kind of
With
looks
the
like
ears
it's walking.
going up and down.
Yeah. I added some secondary motion.
I think that's good.
It's fine.
It works great. I mean, once you point it out, it's like, oh, of course. But then when you don't, it's like, that looks.
It's a walking dog.
It's a walking dog. I have no questions about that.
Yeah, it's all about the secondary motion and like just the slight color shifts, I think.
I like that the dog has those signature. I feel like Blake uses those kinds of eyes a lot. The like exaggerated like curly apostrophe.
Yeah,
eyes.
I think it works really well with
the
with the like weird screen effects that I'm doing. The kind of like glow.
And the wobble.
Yeah. I'm really happy with the wobble.
I was gonna say the wobble looks great.
I love Dr. Katz, and I was really sad when they got rid of Squiggle Vision for all those sorts of cartoons.
Squiggle Vision? Sorry.
Yeah, it's whatever they called, like, because Dr. Katz is extremely static. There's no animation. It's all just conversations that are animated. So everything kind of like wobbles. Not the backgrounds, just the characters is like squiggly. And it's like, I guess, I don't know really why they did it, but it works really well for like, just like a static, like if you're just staring at it like this, it's like everything has a little bit of motion. And it works really well with crappy drawings, like the buildings here, or like the cars, right? Like these kind of like computer mouse drawings of stuff. Like they look really bad, like just sitting there in the asset folder or whatever. But in the game, it like makes sense because they're like kind of squiggly.
Yeah.
And it's the motion that makes them not look terrible. So I did that first because I just wanted things to be squiggly. And then there's like a little bit of sort of like screen glow that I made by like offsetting the colors a little bit.
Yeah. And then there's the gradient, like the outlines have a gradient to them.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like fairly subtle. Like it also like the outside border like has the colors change very slightly around the edges. You can see it's like a little purple in the lower right now, but not for always. It kind of goes around.
Wow, yeah.
There's a lot of like really small color motion and stuff like that. But I think it's finally at the point where like I can kind of throw in whatever art and it looks like it matches because there's lots of other little visual things that are going on.
I
that
feel
kind of
like,
bring
yeah,
it together.
compositionally, every frame looks like a painting or something, you know? Like, you just, like, sit it down, it's on a TV. I can see, like, various frames of this, like, just in a gallery even, just on their own.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for, I want, you know, all these particular parts to look like little composed images.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I like making 2D games, is because you can do that. You don't have to deal with like a camera that people can spin around. It's like you have a little bit more control over like what is in the box that people are looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for this, it's like, and every part that it's like, oh, if I'm in the forest, I'm like, the forest is flat, right? And it's like, it's like I'm in a tapestry, but on the horizon are all these buildings, right? And so like you can kind of like plan it that way, where it's like the horizon is full of these like parallax buildings, but the forest is flat. And then you know, when you get up in the city or whatever, and all the buildings are flat, then the horizon is like something else. It's like, oh, those are my old drawings. This church thing up here, anyway.
Like in the back there?
Yeah, this big one that looks way different than everything else. It like didn't really work out. They're okay. It's just like I didn't like them. But yeah, so when you're on this main street, like then the cemetery is the parallax sort of thingy, right, whatever. And then when you're in the cemetery, you get cars, and trees, and corn.
It feels like Queens.
Jackie Robinson.
Right.
Yeah, that moment when with the buildings in the cemetery, that's really nice. I feel like everyone's had that moment coming over that bridge, and you just like see the cemetery and the buildings.
There's so many cars and there's so many dead people.
Yeah. So this is also just like the Midwest experience. Is just like driving down highways and it's all corn and like occasionally a church with some headstones. So.
I know the world is like looping vertically, but also horizontally.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's infinite.
Yeah, so you can just kind of walk alongside the cars forever if you wanted to. So anyway, this is all like just traffic, and you know, this particular town is like sort of a destination because it's not underground. This is the part where your cars get to come up on the surface. So the other section with the car tunnel and kids playing in it. One of the other characters in the game is like their friend is injured in the car tunnel, and they're grounded basically, and they're not allowed to leave their house, and so you have to go visit them. Anyway, that's a later part, but
cool.
Yeah, so it's like kind of the I like I guess a major like film inspiration for this is something like Network, where it's just like a bunch of different characters that are all like sort of interrelated. Like it's many different kind of micro stories that are all connect to each other in different ways. So like there's kind of 4 or 5 major characters in this, but like I said, they're all sort of like archetypal embodiments of like ideas.
Yeah.
And they don't all necessarily interact with each other, but their stories all kind of like stem from the same sort of genesis point, which is like this particular person dying and the church going away.
And you as the dog are observing all of that. The
Yeah.
dog is your way to like absorb all of those.
Yeah, because there's a lot of different dogs. Like right now it's just this one Blake drawing,
Okay.
but like the idea is that in every scene you're basically a different dog
Hmm.
that just happens to be there. Because everyone's like, yeah, I don't know. You're depending on the scene, you might just be a different dog.
Yeah.
So.
Really cool. So, how much work do you think is left?
You know, it's hard to say.
It's like, yeah.
I didn't even show like.
Yeah, Armor Draw's really good.
Yeah. So at some point,
The mall return game is really good, but I think you cut it, right?
I did. So these are the ones that I
the
made.
mall one.
The ones that are in blue are ones that I made, but I'm
okay,
not going to
okay.
use anymore.
Oh.
The ones that are grayed out are just like I can't even do them because there's nothing there. I just know what they're gonna be. And the orange ones, like they'll start, but there's nothing in them. Yellow ones kind of work, and the white ones are furthest along. But like this is like diegetically a game. This is like a game that one of the characters is making. It's like a little turn-based map game where you can like draw your character's armor on there. I don't have anything to draw with right now, but I will in a second. So you encounter an enemy, and then you can like reveal one turn. And so it's like, okay, they're all gonna move on this turn. And so I'm going to, I think bite happens before they move, so I'm gonna put it there. And things happen in this order. So the enemies will all take their moves, so block, attack, attack. And then mine will happen. I defeated that one. I get a move, and then another block and another move. And then, so it does this for 3 rounds. I bet I can get this guy. So that one takes 2 hits for whatever reason. These little like gremlin things. I don't really know what they are. But anyway, the way this works is like their position on the grid is where they're going to hit you on this grid. Yeah. And so if it hits me here, it's going to hit my arm or whatever, or your character's arm. And I will, I'll show you why that matters in a second. Okay, so they all did. So that one missed because it's in the upper right and there's nothing there. So at the end of the round, I get some stuff. I got leather spray paint, leather, whatever that is, and this thing.
You'll say bye.
So now I have this leather spray paint, and I can put some armor on myself.
Oh, armor draw.
Yeah. So and I have this, and maybe I'll get. I feel like my head needs some protection.
So now, if the gremlins try to attack those spaces, it'll be harder for them.
So damage is calculated by pixel. So depending on what is under the pixel, it'll check for like what kind of armor is covering that pixel. So that's So because this is a game in the world of the game. It's like someone's like, hey, what do you think of this thing I'm making? It's like it's supposed to be representing some stuff, but it's like way too complicated in like the wrong ways, where like this system is extremely involved for no reason. There's like random battle. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's sort of an idea that I had and I just felt compelled to make in like a week. And then I slotted it into this as like, it's basically done. There's like more to do, but like it doesn't need to be any more done than this for the purposes of like it being a thing that some character is walking you through and telling you what to do.
Is that what you were talking about earlier with the cookie cutter setup, and then you cut a bigger piece of that?
No, that's like for the frames. That's for the visual frames.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So so this is a it's there's like a younger character in the game who is like working on this, and it's like clear that they want to like represent stuff, but they can't quite like, they don't exactly know how to like do it or like get at it, and so they're kind of just like doing video gamey things, which it's just like a very familiar feeling to me, and I see other people kind of like struggling with it too. So I wanted to just like leave this in here with exactly that, where it's like, here's someone who's just like making a game and they have all these ideas, and like it's just kind of overcomplicated for no reason in these like really like amusing ways, like this whole thing, right? I don't know. So
that's very relatable, actually.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all this is. You play a couple rounds of this, and there's you beat up some monsters or whatever, and then I'm just like, what did you think? But that's like you go visit your landlord, and the landlord's grandchild is working on this game. They're like a 14-year-old or whatever. and you hang out with them. They're not allowed to come to the death party or the goodbye party because they get caught playing in traffic.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that's why these are structured this way, where it's like you do the traffic one, and then within this tier in like Act 2 is this thing. So anyway, I'm sort of like organizing things.
The post-it notes
as I
with
go.
systems on them.
Yeah,
move
yeah.
them around conceptually depending on where you think will come next.
Yeah, doing this screen actually, I think helped me a lot. Like these are just objects that like when I click on them, it takes me to that thing, and like making sure that everything is its own isolated game that I can go and play and not have to like I don't have to go through anything to get to any part, and none of the parts are reliant on any of the other ones. So it's not like it's taking it's not like it's taking information from one thing and like putting it in another. They're all separate. So I'm able to like move them around narratively and stuff, right? Like so this used to be I was conceptualizing this as like one of the first things you did, but then recently I'm like, no, maybe this is the end.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. Any of these things could be moved around. So that's kind of fun. It's like I guess liberating to decide that like okay, none of these things are going to have an effect on the other ones.
Yeah.
And it sort of frees you from being locked into the order of things.
So it's an underrated investment of time, I think, in game development to like build tools for yourself to either visualize, conceptualize, or just debug stuff. Because like, I don't need that, I can just experience the game and whatever. But taking the time to build this probably really helps. I can see that being very useful.
Yeah, I mean, I made a whole thing for this is really strange because these are all their own like. In Unity it would be called a scene, and Game Maker it's called a room, but like these are all either their own room or multiple rooms. But like my previous game Witch Ball, that's all one room. It's like a single screen with like different objects that like do the game basically. But I made a tool for that, which really helped too, which was just like determining like how long is a lap, like how many laps are there, like how like here's the thing that generates the track based on a random seed, but it's like the saved seed or whatever. But like there's nothing to look at in the level editor. It's just a blank black like box with like a single object in it called like Game Manager, and that thing makes everything else happen. But yeah, this sort of like the setup thing that I did for both for that game and for this game have helped a lot. I've been trying to be a bit more visual in recent like work because it's actually a lot easier than trying to do everything like it's just like text and code and stuff.
Totally.
I think like one thing that happens a lot is that, especially if you're developing as one person or a small team, is like you start to get obsessed with the trees, but you don't see the forest. And I think like debugging tools and those distances really help you conceptualize like the forest in addition to the trees, to make sure that you're not getting too sucked into working on something that you ultimately don't want, or that you're going to completely rearrange.
Yeah. I mean that like because the forest is kind of the important part, because it's like what actually ties all these things together, and trying to figure out what that is like helps to know which parts are like you don't need. Like I spent on it's turned off, but otherwise I would show it. But like I spent a lot of time on this mall thing.
Yeah, I wanted to show
it does
how
load.
much time.
I mean, it might. Yeah, it does.
Oh,
load.
darn.
Okay, that's good. Because
I
don't have the cutout.
Even as a separate just like system, it's so involved. It's like the most involved system.
Yeah. It's like a maze. It's like a maze. The idea is that you were returning items to the mall, but every item, there were like 9 things that you had, and every combination of those was a different like ability, and it was this sort of like bullet hell style game, like what's that shooting gallery game?
Not Hotline Miami.
No, it's like a Super Nintendo game, but they remade it for the Switch. Anyway, anyway, it's like that, but like you were stepping through the mall, and every like so many, it was like boxes, and you were experiencing was a 2D shooting gallery, and you would step through the different boxes, and you could turn left or right. It doesn't. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I just like I spent a ton of time on that, and it got to the point where I was just like, this doesn't really make sense to have in the story anymore. Like the story was kind of like developed past it, and so I just like don't have it anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how many iterations a game will go through where a lot of stuff is just crumpled up and thrown aside where the player will never get to see it, but it might be necessary to actually reach the things they do see.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. It's just so much time.
Yeah.
I would restart it, but I think that if I close this, it'll just go to the desktop. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's all good. I think now that we've crashed, I think we're also out of time.
Nice.
So,
A good ending.
Yeah.
An appropriate ending.
Appropriate ending. Thanks for showing us this game that's very much in progress, but also seems very far along. Seems like a lot of work has gone into it already.
Yeah. It's kind of at the point where at least I have a list of things that I need to get done, whereas before I didn't have that. It was very much just sort of like groping around in the dark, and it felt kind of bad to just like, I don't know. It's like fun to explore, but at some point you're just like, gosh, I really wish I knew what I was supposed to be doing. It's about at that point now where it's like, okay, I have at least a drawing of like what I want every single screen to look like, and I know what I need to do in each of those things. It's just a matter of doing it, which feels pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I forgot to bring it. I was gonna bring like the things, or I draw every screen before I make it. Like the traffic thing, I just sat in the park and I like drew that, and then I went home and made it. It's usually like how I work.
Yeah. Seems like the systems are there, and now you can just execute on specific small visions that you have.
Yeah, and I'm just like keeping them all really small. Like that Necromancer game is gonna be the most complex one that I have yet to do, but the rest of them, I don't know. I feel like they won't be that bad. Mostly it's just like budgeting time for things not working, which sometimes they just don't. There's like certain aspects of this project just are like cursed or something. Where like I'll make something and it just like doesn't work for no reason, and I'll make a copy of it and the copy works, and I just leave the previous one in there just out of like superstition.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So it's like I'm afraid for it to get too much bigger because I just don't know what will go wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah. All the best with this project. We're looking forward to seeing it out there.
Yeah, it's at the point where I should probably just like be sending it to people to play. It hasn't really felt like that yet before. It was just like all you could do is walk around, and it's like, well, anybody could walk around. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, whoever's watching, and Lawra Suits Clark.
Yes, thanks.